All right, so today we're going deep on spiritual systems
Ooh.
and how to spot when things might be going wrong.
Okay.
We'll be looking for those signs of deterioration and manipulation,
Right.
which can be
Yeah,
a sensitive topic.
it is. Yeah, it's definitely an area where you really need to look closely,
Absolutely.
especially, these days, everybody and their brother's got a system or a guru
Right.
promising enlightenment.
And you sent over some fascinating stuff for this deep dive.
Yeah, well,
We've
hopefully,
got excerpts from some scholarly articles on cults
right?
and what they call deteriorated spiritual systems.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to look at some real-world examples with online articles, forum posts, social media, all that stuff,
That's good.
all focusing on a specific organization
Okay.
called the Science of Identity Foundation
Okay.
and its leader, Chris Butler.
It's a good mix, I think,
Yeah, I think so
to
too.
kind of get both a theoretical understanding, but then
Mhm.
see how these things play out in real life.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty with the Science of Identity Foundation,
Right. Yeah.
can you break down this whole concept of a deteriorated spiritual system? What are we even talking about here?
Well, imagine a river, right?
Okay.
And it's vibrant and it's flowing, full of life,
Mm-hmm.
always changing, adapting to the terrain.
Okay.
But then over time, something happens.
Okay.
The water slows down,
Mm-hmm.
sediment builds up,
Mm-hmm.
and that once dynamic river,
Yeah.
becomes kind of stagnant,
Okay, I can picture that.
choked with debris.
Yeah, but how does that apply to, like, I don't know, a spiritual group or a set of teachings?
Well, just like that river,
Mm-hmm.
right? A spiritual system can start out with pure intentions,
Mm-hmm.
offering genuine, insights and practices.
Okay.
But as time goes on, things can shift.
Right.
The teachings might become rigid, dogmatic,
Mm-hmm.
lose their flexibility.
Okay.
The folks might go from like inner transformation
Yeah.
to like outward displays of piety
Yeah.
or really strict adherence to rules.
So it's not necessarily that the original teachings were, like, bad,
Right.
but that something just got lost or distorted along the way?
Exactly. Yeah. One of the scholars we're looking at
Yeah.
calls this process crystallization or fossilization.
Mm.
They write, when the doctrine becomes inflexible, when practice and observance take precedence over the aim or understanding,
Okay.
we are faced with a deteriorated system.
Fossilized. That's a powerful image.
It is.
Like a dinosaur bone, impressive to look at,
Right.
but not exactly alive and kicking anymore.
Not at all.
It sounds like we need to be careful not to confuse, like,
Yeah.
outward appearances
Right.
with genuine spiritual depth.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
So in a fossilized system, like we were talking about,
Yeah.
the focus might shift from that inner transformation
Mm-hmm.
to just looking the part, following the rules,
Yeah.
instead of actually cultivating wisdom and compassion.
So if I'm getting this right,
Yeah.
a big red flag would be a group or a system
Okay.
that emphasizes, rituals,
Right.
outward behavior over genuine inner work.
Exactly.
Like, if it's more about what you wear or what you eat
Right.
than about cultivating a deeper connection, with yourself or something greater.
That's a great example. Yeah.
Okay.
It's about being aware of where the emphasis is.
Mm,
Is it on external forms?
yeah.
Or is it on really developing those inner qualities
Mhm.
like kindness and compassion and wisdom?
And I imagine this whole fossilization thing can
Yeah.
play into the hands of people who are,
Oh, absolutely.
looking to exploit or manipulate others
Yeah.
within a spiritual system.
Unfortunately, that's often the case.
Okay.
So when a system becomes really rigid
Mm-hmm.
and dogmatic, it creates an environment where
Right.
manipulation can thrive and followers might be, discouraged from questioning anything
Mhm.
or questioning the leader.
Right.
And if they dissent, they could be met with some pretty harsh consequences.
That sounds kind of like eerily similar to what we see with some cults.
There are definitely some parallels there.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things about a cult is you have a charismatic leader
Mm-hmm.
who demands absolute obedience
Okay.
and isolates their followers from outside influences.
Right. So we see similar tactics in, like, abusive relationships too,
Yeah.
where, one person's exerting control and manipulating the other person
Absolutely.
through isolation and fear.
Right.
Wow. So it's starting to feel like
Yeah.
we're uncovering a pattern here.
It's not just spiritual systems.
Mm-hmm.
It's about power
Mm-hmm.
and how power can be used to exploit people who are vulnerable
Right.
and looking for meaning, looking for connection.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
just to be clear,
Yeah.
we're not saying that, all spiritual systems are bad.
No, not at all.
Or that everyone who's looking for spiritual guidance is, gullible or
Of
whatever.
course not, no.
There are a lot of genuine teachers and traditions out there
Absolutely, yeah.
that offer, profound wisdom and practices for personal growth.
Right.
The key is to approach spiritual seeking with discernment,
Yes.
ask questions, trust your intuition,
Absolutely.
be wary of anybody who says they have all the answers
Mm.
or, demands obedience.
Right. You have to find that balance between being open-minded,
Right.
but also having some healthy skepticism.
Yeah.
You got to be open to new ideas and teachings,
Mm-hmm.
but also be willing to walk away if something doesn't feel right,
Totally.
Yeah. Which is why this stuff you got on the Science of Identity Foundation is really interesting,
Okay.
because we can start to see how these concepts, deterioration, manipulation,
Yeah.
can play out in real life.
All right. You've definitely piqued my curiosity.
Good.
Let's dive into the world of the Science of Identity Foundation
Okay.
and see what we can uncover.
Let's do it.
All right, so we've kind of laid out some groundwork
Yeah.
for understanding how spiritual systems can deteriorate,
Right.
become breeding grounds for manipulation.
Right.
Now let's apply that lens to
Yeah.
Science of Identity Foundation and its leader, Chris Butler.
Okay.
Where do we even begin with this?
Well, one thing that jumps out at me
Okay.
from all those forum posts and articles you
Yeah.
sent
Mhm.
is the emphasis on surrender
Okay.
in Butler's teachings.
Right.
It's a concept that's often at the heart of a lot of spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
But as we were talking about before,
Mm-hmm.
it can definitely be twisted
Right.
and used as a tool for control.
Surrendering to a
Right.
higher power
Yeah.
or a set of principles is one thing.
Exactly.
But surrendering your critical thinking
Right.
to a human leader,
Yeah,
that raises all sorts of red flags for me.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually, there's this document
Okay.
that was allegedly circulated within Sapphire where Butler talks about surrender
Hmm?
in a way that I think really illustrates this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What does he say?
He encourages followers to see themselves as like
Okay.
lower than the straw in the street, the
Mhm.
most sinful.
Wow.
And he argues that, embracing this sense of worthlessness
Okay.
is essential to experiencing true love for Krishna.
That's intense.
It is. It's a,
Yeah.
classic example of what we were talking about.
Right.
Breaking down a person's self-worth
Mm-hmm.
so that they become more reliant on the leader.
Right. So it's like
Huh.
setting up a dependency.
Exactly.
If you convince people that they're inherently flawed or unworthy,
Right.
then they're going to cling to anyone who offers them
Right.
a path to redemption.
Precisely. And this focus on your own sinfulness
Yeah.
can create this perpetual cycle of guilt and shame,
Mm-hmm.
which can be incredibly effective
Right.
in maintaining control.
It's like a spiritual hamster wheel, always striving, but never quite reaching.
Yeah, you never quite get there.
That sense of worthiness.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not lost on me that this ties into the allegations of exploitation too.
Right.
If you've got people convinced they're, inherently bad or in need of fixing,
Right.
it becomes easier to justify demanding their time, their money,
Exactly.
their obedience
Yeah.
in the name of spiritual progress.
That's a potent combination.
Yeah.
The manipulation
Right.
and the potential for material gain.
Okay, so we've got this emphasis on surrender,
Right.
this potential for undermining self-worth,
Yeah.
and then these allegations of financial demands.
Mhm.
It's starting to paint a pretty bleak picture here.
Yeah. And then you add to that
Okay.
these claims from former members
Yep.
who say they spent years
Yeah.
totally dedicated to this
Mm.
and they felt spiritually stagnant. Like they weren't actually experiencing
Yeah.
the transformation that was promised.
Which, contradicts what Butler says in that same document, right?
Right.
Where he presents surrender as
Right.
the true beginning of this spiritual journey.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder then,
Right.
if this isn't leading to genuine growth,
Yeah.
what purpose is it serving?
Right. Is it about personal evolution?
Right.
Or is it about power and control?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's especially relevant,
Okay.
when you consider that Butler actually discourages
Oh, really?
his followers from exploring other spiritual teachings.
Wow. Yeah, I came across a forum post where
Yeah.
someone described SAF as a closed system.
Right.
Like essentially cutting members off from the
Yeah.
wider world of
Yeah.
spiritual knowledge and practice.
That isolation is a huge red flag
Yeah.
because it creates this echo chamber
Okay.
where only the leader's narrative is allowed.
Right. So without those outside
Yeah.
perspectives, the system becomes stagnant.
Right.
More focused on maintaining its structure
Exactly.
than on fostering genuine spiritual growth.
Yeah, which is, basically the definition of a deteriorated system.
Yeah.
That loss of vitality, the loss of dynamism.
It becomes more about rules,
Yeah.
rituals, than about,
Yeah.
cultivating those qualities that really matter.
Right. The compassion.
Right.
The wisdom.
Connection.
Yeah, the connection.
And that stagnation seems to be like at the root of all the disillusionment,
Yeah.
pain that we're seeing
Yeah.
in these accounts from former SIF members.
They talk about feeling trapped, manipulated,
Yeah.
and ultimately betrayed.
It's heartbreaking. It's a
Yeah.
reminder that we need to be vigilant,
We do.
even when we're looking for spiritual guidance.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another disturbing aspect of this.
Mm-hmm.
The alleged history of cis presence in Poland
Yeah.
and the story of this young woman, Kazia.
I read about that. It's a tragic story.
It is.
And a real reminder of what can happen
Right.
when individuals get caught up
Yeah.
in systems that prioritize obedience and control over well-being.
Before we go any further, I just want to acknowledge that what we're talking about is really sensitive
Yeah.
and potentially triggering for some people.
Of course.
It's important to approach these accounts
Mm-hmm.
with compassion and respect.
Yeah. And it's also important for us to emphasize, I think,
Yeah.
that we're just presenting information based on these sources. We're not, making judgments about the validity of these claims.
No, we're just trying to understand what's going on here, the patterns, the dynamics that are at play.
We're aiming to give you the tools to think critically about this stuff.
Exactly.
And draw your own conclusions.
Right.
So with that said,
Mm-hmm.
what can we learn from Kasia's story?
Well, her story, as it's told in these online forums,
Okay.
really highlights the pressure
Okay.
that was allegedly placed on members to conform,
Mm-hmm.
to the group's expectations.
Right.
She was reportedly encouraged to cut ties with her family and friends,
Wow.
devote all of her time
Yeah.
to SAF activities.
Right. It's that classic
Yeah.
cult behavior, isolating people
Yeah.
from their support systems,
Right.
making them completely dependent on the group.
Right. And in Kaseshi's case, tragically,
Yeah.
it seems like this pressure contributed to her taking her own life.
It's a stark reminder
It is.
that these aren't just like
Yeah.
abstract concepts we're talking about.
No, these are real-world consequences.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to spot the warning signs.
Absolutely.
And her account also kind of touches on
Yeah.
another recurring theme in these discussions.
Okay.
The financial demands
Right.
that were allegedly placed on members.
There are claims that people were pressured to contribute
Yeah.
significant sums of money to SEF,
Mhm.
often to the detriment of their own financial well-being.
Right.
And this brings us back to Joseph Bismarck,
Right.
that wealthy businessman we mentioned.
Yeah.
According to the sources, he's alleged to have played a key role in SEF's financial operations,
Yeah.
even allegedly purchasing a multi-million-dollar home for Chris Butler.
Which raises a lot of questions
Yeah.
about the transparency and the ethical implications of all of this.
Okay, so let's pause here for a second
Okay.
and recap what we've got.
Right.
So we've got this concept of surrender
Yeah.
that's potentially being twisted into a tool for control.
Right.
We've got allegations of financial exploitation, pressure to conform.
Yeah.
We've got a group that allegedly isolates its members
Right.
and discourages them from seeking outside perspectives.
Yeah.
And then we've got this tragic story that illustrates the very real harm
Yeah.
that can result from all of this.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. And I imagine some listeners might be feeling, I don't know, a bit disillusioned with the whole idea of organized spirituality at this point.
I can understand that. When we see something that's supposed to be about light and guidance
Right.
become twisted,
Yeah.
it's natural to question everything.
So where do we go from here?
Right.
How do we reconcile this desire for spiritual growth
Yeah.
with these very real dangers that we've been talking about?
It's a great question, and I don't know that there's a simple answer.
Right.
But I think, our deep dive here
Yeah.
has provided some valuable tools
Okay.
for navigating all of this.
I mean, that whole emphasis on
Yeah.
critical thinking and discernment.
Exactly. It's about developing that inner compass, that ability to sense when something feels off.
Right.
Even if it's presented in spiritual language.
Just like we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
We need to be both open-minded and skeptical. Open to new ideas, but also willing to question, to dig deeper, to trust our gut.
I love that.
Yeah.
Open-minded skepticism.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
But it's essential
Absolutely.
for this whole journey.
You know, when we were talking about that document where Chris Butler talks about surrender as the true beginning,
Right.
it got me thinking, like, maybe true surrender isn't about giving up our critical thinking or submitting to a human leader.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about surrendering our ego's need to be right, to have all the answers.
That's a really powerful insight.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of our attachment to these fixed beliefs.
Right.
And being open to new perspectives, even ones that challenge us.
So instead of surrendering to a guru, we surrender to, like, the unknown.
The unknown, yeah.
To the possibility that we don't have it all figured out.
Exactly. And that kind of surrender can be incredibly liberating.
Right.
Because it allows us to approach our spiritual journeys with humility, with curiosity, rather than dogma and rigidity.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel here.
Good.
It's not about rejecting spirituality altogether.
No.
It's about being more, like, conscious and discerning.
Right.
About how we engage with it.
And it's about recognizing that genuine spiritual communities are built on mutual respect, open dialogue, a shared commitment to truth.
Right.
Not on blind faith and unquestioning obedience.
It's about finding teachers and teachings that empower us to think for ourselves, to question, to explore, to grow into our fullest potential.
Beautifully said. And it's a reminder that the most profound journey is often the one we take within ourselves.
Well, folks, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the Science of Identity Foundation.
It's been a journey.
It has been a journey, for sure.
Yeah. We've covered some challenging terrain.
Yeah, but I hope this conversation has given you a deeper understanding of how to navigate this stuff.
The complexities of spiritual seeking.
Remember, your intuition is your greatest guide.
It is.
If something feels off, trust that feeling.
Yes.
Ask questions, challenge assumptions,
and
never be afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your values or your sense of truth.
Your truth.
Yeah.
And remember that true spirituality is about connection,
Hmm.
compassion, and the expansion of consciousness.
Absolutely.
May your journey be filled with all of those things.
And with authenticity and wisdom.
Yes.
And the courage to seek your own truth.
That's it.
Man, we've really uncovered some unsettling stuff.
We have.
With the Science of Identity Foundation. It's a lot to process.
It is.
And I imagine some listeners might be feeling kind of disillusioned.
Yeah. With the whole idea of organized spirituality.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
When you see something that's supposed to be about light and guidance, you know.
Right.
Get twisted like that. It's natural to start questioning everything.
So where do we go from here?
Right.
How do we reconcile this desire for spiritual growth with these dangers we've been talking about?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's an easy answer.
Right.
But I think what we've talked about today has given us some tools to navigate this stuff.
You mean like that emphasis on critical thinking?
Yeah.
And discernment.
Exactly. It's about, developing that inner compass.
Right.
That ability to sense when something's off, even if it sounds all spiritual and everything.
Right. Like we were saying before, we got to be open-minded, but also skeptical, open to new ideas, but also willing to question things, to dig deeper.
Right. And trust your gut. Trust your gut.
That's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Open-minded skepticism.
I like that.
It's a tough balance.
It is.
But it's so essential on this path.
You know, thinking back to that document where Chris Butler's talking about surrender.
Right.
As the true beginning.
Yeah.
It got me thinking.
Okay.
Like, maybe true surrender isn't about giving up our critical thinking.
Okay.
Or submitting to some leader.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about surrendering our ego's need to be right.
Yeah.
To have all the answers.
That's a powerful insight.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of that attachment to our beliefs.
Okay.
And being open to new perspectives.
Yeah.
Even if they make us uncomfortable.
So instead of surrendering to a guru, We surrender to
the unknown.
The unknown, yeah. To the possibility that, we don't have it all figured out.
That kind of surrender can be incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
Because it allows us to approach our spiritual journeys with humility and curiosity.
Right.
Not with dogma and rigidity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel here.
Good.
So it's not about rejecting spirituality.
No, not at all.
It's about being more conscious.
Yes.
More discerning.
About how we engage with it.
How we engage with it, yeah.
And I think it's also about recognizing that real spiritual communities, they're built on mutual respect. Open dialogue.
Right.
A shared commitment to the truth.
Not on blind faith or obedience.
Exactly.
It's about finding those teachers and teachings that empower us to think for ourselves.
Yes, to question, to explore.
Yeah, to grow into our fullest potential.
Beautifully said. And it reminds me that the most profound journey is often the one we take within ourselves.
Well, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the Science of Identity Foundation.
It's been a journey.
It really has.
Yeah.
We've covered some challenging terrain today.
We have.
But I hope our conversation has given you a deeper understanding of this stuff.
Yeah, the complexities of spiritual seeking.
Yeah, remember, your intuition is your best guide.
It is.
If something feels off, trust that feeling.
Absolutely.
Ask questions, challenge assumptions.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your values or your sense of truth.
Your truth.
Yeah.
True spirituality is about connection and compassion.
Yeah.
And the expansion of consciousness.
Absolutely.
May your journey be filled with all of those things.
And with authenticity and wisdom.
Yeah.
And the courage to seek your own truth.
That's it.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.